Around 4,000 years ago, there was a man who built a small building for prayer. And when he finished constructing it, he raised his hands and he made the following dua: رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Our Lord, accept this from us. You are the hearing and knowing. The name of that structure is the Kaaba, and its builder was Prophet Ibrahim. This simple structure was constructed by two men, father and son, in the middle of a desolate desert during a very lonely period in human history. Yet this very building would later become the direction of prayer for all of humanity, a place inhabited by angels and the home of blessings and abundance. It is the holiest site on earth, venerated by prophets and messengers, and today is visited annually by millions of people. How did this simple structure become the most sacred and exalted of them all? How was it raised to this level of fame and universal acceptance despite its very modest origins? No doubt that it ultimately boils down to ikhlas, sincerity, and tawfiq, help and assistance from Allah. But you see, when these ingredients are present, what is the butterfly effect? It's a term that was coined by Edward Lorenz, a meteorologist and mathematician who died in 2008. And this concept makes up part of chaos theory, which is a well-known branch in the field of physics. In simple terms, the butterfly effect is the notion that minute causes will eventually have massive effects. It was initially illustrated by the idea of a butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazonian jungle, which subsequently causes a storm to ravage in Europe. And I will share with you just a few examples of this notion in application. Did you know that in the early 1900s, a young Adolf Hitler applied to study at an art school? It is believed that during this process, he was rejected by a Jewish professor. By his own estimation, which is shared by many historians, this rejection ultimately shaped his metamorphosis from an aspiring bohemian artist to the embodiment of evil. Now, of course, we can only speculate how different history may have unfolded and how much tragedy could have been averted if Hitler had merely limited himself to watercolors. What ultimately happened, however, of course, is the wise qadar, decree of Allah, and this is an example of the butterfly effect. Did you also know that both world wars were sparked off by the mere wrong turning of a car? On the 28th of June 1914, a teenage Bosnian Serb called Gavrilo Princip went to Sarajevo with two other nationalists to assassinate the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was the immediate heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The initial assassination attempt failed. A bomb exploded beneath the car behind the archdukes and wounded the occupants. So having believed that the plan had failed, the assassin made his way home and stopped off for a sandwich on Franz Joseph Street. Meanwhile, the driver of the Archduke was supposed to redirect his vehicle to an expressway to facilitate a high-speed escape. Somehow, however, this crucial message was not properly communicated, and the driver made the fatal mistake of turning onto Franz Joseph Street. The assassin, with the sandwich in his hand, realized that a golden opportunity was standing right before him. He rushed towards them and at point-blank range killed both the Archduke and his wife. The assassination sparked a deep political crisis, and the superpowers of the world started to blame one another, and within 1 week, World War I was underway. This bitter conflict lasted for about 4 years and resulted in the death of around 15 million people. This paved the way for a humiliating peace treaty for Germany, which included a guilt clause. This clause required Germany to accept the responsibility of Germany and her allies for causing all the loss and damage during the conflict. The treaty required Germany to pay billions of dollars to the Allies. This humiliating defeat provoked the anger of Germans and sparked a wave of nationalistic fervor in the country. These conditions were vital for enabling the rise of Hitler, whose expansionist ambitions paved the way for the Second World War. Now, this latter conflict was far bloodier than its predecessor and resulted in the loss of around 75 million lives. The Second World War's aftermath immediately led to the Cold War. During this time, there was a global division between East and West, with the United States and Soviet Union being the chief protagonists of the two sides. During this conflict, two different socio-economic systems found themselves engaged in conflict for about half a century. The Soviet Union's decline paved the way for America's ascension as the sole superpower of the world, which had massive repercussions for countries in the Middle East and other parts of the world. And the policies implemented by the United States in the region continue to have effects until this day of ours, all because of the wrong turning of a car. This, of course, is the wise qadar, decree of Allah, and it's a good example, perhaps, of the butterfly effect. Did you also know that Egypt's course of history changed because of a child who was picked up from a well? Think about it. Prophet Yusuf suffered at the hands of his brothers, who conspired to separate him from their father. As a result, this led to Yusuf being cruelly thrown inside of a well. And then the sequence of events followed were amazing. He was found by a passing business caravan, which led him to Egypt, where he became a slave of Egypt's chief minister, Al-Aziz. Yusuf would face another trial when the influential wife of Al-Aziz tried to seduce him. Her plots failed. She made a false accusation against him, which led to his unjust imprisonment. One thing led to another. Yusuf's now ability to interpret dreams and his intuition was discovered. This led to a meeting with Egypt's ruler, who urgently needed the interpretation for a dream that he saw. He'd earned the trust of the king. Yusuf had become a powerful minister. He played a crucial role in rescuing Egypt from the devastating effects of a crippling famine, which allowed Yusuf to reunite with his family and siblings in the land of Egypt. And what is fascinating is that this chain of events was activated by a group of jealous men who wanted to kill their younger brother in a park somewhere in Egypt. Isn't it amazing?